Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host, K Mo. We have a special guest on tonight, a author, a good brother, one of my good friends. We were able to speak over the summer, and we'll see who that is when we come right back. Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host, K Mo, life coach, relationship coach, and podcaster. We're here tonight because we want to talk about boys to men, the influence on Black men in Black boys' lives. How do we go about looking at those? And now, for the past couple of weeks, I've been thinking about the best person to have on the show to have that conversation. And this young man is one of those good brothers that is doing so many great things in his community down in Florida and around the country with his influence on young boys, even young women, and what he wants to accomplish with that. So I'm going to bring on Mr. Michael Woodward Jr.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Man. I'm so privileged to be here. What's going on, man?
It's going all right, man. So I know we met actually for the first time during the pandemic, and it was a wonderful conversation that we had because you and I had a chance to break some bread, and some soul food in Florida, and also just have a good conversation about some of the things that we both have mutual interest in. I had the opportunity to actually see you for the first time online, and I saw you in the DMV area, and I thought you actually lived in the DMV, but you don't. You live in Florida still, which is still a good connection. So when I go down to Florida, I can have somebody to hang out with and break bread with the conversations. And again, on a serious note, with what we're trying to do in our communities as Black men. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, because as you know, I know you are a doctoral candidate and you are trying to finish that up, but also you're doing a lot of good things as an author. Can you tell our viewers and listeners about some of the things that you're doing over there, Mike?
Well, man, good brother. To begin with, it's just every day we try.
Right.
I think just to kick it off, that's probably one of the biggest things I want people to walk away with. You know, is every day is another step forward. You know, and sometimes it may be a step backwards, but it's okay.
Right.
It all begins with an attempt. You know, so that's something that I just truly like to focus my efforts on. And you know, whether we're having a good day or a bad day, or whether it's just flowing, or whether we're looking at a brick wall, you know, it's always just that constant, like, just effort and attempt. So yeah, man. Again, it's a privilege to be here. I remember that night. Around.
Right.
For a Miami subs.
Yeah, Miami subs, and I wanted some soul food too. I was like, where can we get some food this late? Coming in all the way from Fort Lauderdale. So man, I appreciate that pickup.
I live to serve, baby.
So tell the viewers again about, you know, who you are, Mike. What are you doing? I know you're doing a lot of you're showing your viewers and your fan base what you're doing in your community, but tell folks here tonight who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, well, my name is Michael Woodward Jr. So many things I try to use to describe me, but I think first and foremost, I'm a scholar. Every day I'm trying to learn, you know, whether it's a new book or a new YouTube or whatever, you know, little just nugget I could walk away from with conversation with anyone. So I think that's first. I just became a PhD candidate a couple weeks ago, finished my comprehensive exams, started the dissertation, and it's a journey. It's happening fast, so it's kind of a whirlwind, you know, with the whole no set structure. But a couple other things. I'm a self-published children's author, you know, and I'm sure we'll dive in into why, I even chose to go down that path. But that's just one of the other things to describe me. But more importantly, I'm a servant. I do live to serve others in any capacity that I can. I feel like life's all about solving other people's problems. We can figure out the right way to do it. Who knows what door that'll open to the next hallway or whatnot.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we wanted to make sure that we wanted to know that piece. For the folks that don't know, and it's first time listening to me, it was just something that was in me that I couldn't stop, or I had the passion to give back. And I think one of the things that I remember my mother, especially during the times when we were, during the holiday season or whatnot, we would go to different houses, brother. And I'm not saying we had a lot of money at all, but we would go to different houses and drop things off.
Oh, yeah.
And I could never understand that. I was like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we giving stuff back to me as a child, But she would do that for her. She was a teacher, so she would do that for her students. And so the respect that she gained over the years, even with her passing, to see some of those students even having to come back and talk to me about her, I understood. And so I think it's just in my blood. I know that you're going to talk a little bit about that as well, with you being a former teacher and being able to give back and do the things you're doing. And a lot of that is implemented within the stories that you've been telling. So go a little bit into, your storytelling, man. Like, talk to me about, how you gain that influence and why you start doing what you're doing with writing books.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it all starts with giving, random acts of kindness, service to all. I have a very similar story to that I can recount just so easily. Growing up, it was around Christmas. My mom, she really likes to give back, so I never forget, we were making, not one year it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but the first year it was like sausage biscuits or something. She made all these biscuits and fried up all like these Jimmy Dean sausage patties. And me and my brothers are like, oh, we about to grub. Oh, okay. It's about to be a buffet. Next thing we knew, she had pulled out brown paper bags and had us just bagging it up like an assembly line at McDonald's or something. So as like the morning goes on and, we did all our cleaning up or whatever, we trying to figure out what's up with this food, fighting over scraps or whatnot. But we drive on down to downtown Atlanta and we're out giving it out, to whoever we can find on the block or on the corner, throughout the inner city. So it's just random acts like that. I remember my father just constantly staying in the classroom, just always just in the class. Like, he was a teacher. He was a high school teacher, the teacher that I avoided. My advisor used to be like, so you're going to take economics with your father? I said, no, sir. Put me in the football coach office. Put me in the football coach room. I'll take that one. And he doesn't let me forget that, even during my struggles and some of my inquiries within economics and, financial health and well-being around the house. And I can understand that. But moreover, I used to see him stay after class and be the first one in on Saturday mornings doing Project Alpha and all these different things to get the community involved. And I'm like, bro, are you getting paid for this? Like, because we still trying to find a way last time I checked. So help me understand. And it was through that giving. And it was through those efforts within teaching that I learned that we serve a greater purpose. And it takes so much more than what it is that we think we have or what it is that we think we can do, because there's so much that is required from all of us. And I feel like all it starts with is just a try, and yeah. So that's where it kind of That's where it started for me to think of other people.
Right.
Once I finally kind of had that humility equipped,
right,
I was a little bit more able to listen and to see the world around me.
Right.
As opposed to just being worried about myself, worried about what we're going to eat for dinner. You know what I'm saying? With kids about to get in for the start of the school year, and that just transcended, to all the confidence and the self-efficacy that I feel like it took to get through the first book.
Right. So what was after that first book? What made you continue to do it, after that? Or if you can't answer that off the top of your head, what's that book that gives you that inspiration for the topic tonight when we talk about boys to men and giving back to, Black boys?
See, now I'm wired a little differently.
Okay.
I'm somewhat of a mad scientist.
Okay.
There's so many beautiful things that inspire me when I think of Sounder. Sounder. That was one of my favorite books growing up because it was digestible. It was kind of thin, so I already automatically thought I could knock it out. But there's so many other pieces of literature that make me cringe, and they make me really question, the curriculum and where it is that we stand in life, and and the expectation that we have for our children with the attempt to become great readers.
Right.
Okay, my bad. All right, so that was my son. I don't know if he cracked me.
No. We definitely, that's why we have this conversation, bro. Bring him in too if he needs to.
Right, I'm gonna bring. He want to show you he's done.
Right. Well, maybe you bring him to the end at the end, right?
But no. What were we talking about?
Talking about your book, the Sounder, and you were talking about what that inspiration was for you.
There are things that inspire me to like, oh man, I can create something just as good.
Right.
If not hopefully half as good.
Right.
But there are also other things that I saw and that I heard and then I read that made me feel inferior. And I got tired of seeing us play the antagonist,
right,
the bad guy, the villain, the dim-witted sidekick, the dunce friend. That wasn't good enough for me. But I think what pushed me over the edge was reliving my formal years in the classroom. Being that 3rd and 5th grade teacher and seeing students like, because I couldn't afford a library in the classroom.
A
couple of books I was able to like skim here and there, from alumni and things like that. But we had to make that trip. I had to be the librarian best friend.
Hey,
Ms. Okudo, we're gonna be in there Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. We'll be right back Thursday afternoon for whatever other period. And it was things like that where it gave me a bird's eye, like a front row view on how children think when they go to look for a good book, if they're utilizing the skills that they are to learn, whether it's from me or the teachers who come before me, and seeing that whole cognitive process, that metacognition, and towards why I want this book. So, I learned as a teacher, you got to be more of a facilitator. Let them roam, let them wander in the woods for just a little bit. Always keep an eye on them, but don't try to be so, hey, do this, hey, think that way. Allow them to do it on their own. But there's only so much that you do allow when you start to see frustrations. And you start to see that child go from, I don't like this, no, I don't understand it, to I don't like this, to this is stupid.
Right.
And that right there, you have to be able, as a parent, as a mentor, as a teacher, you have to be able to, be able to assess that in that moment and step in and be like, yo, what's going on? And I learned that students, kids, Black kids, Hispanic kids, it don't matter, boys, girls, they'll only read so much LeBron James and Frederick Douglass. Like, I love me some nonfiction, but let's be honest, we all like a good story.
Right.
So that was something that really stuck out to me as I saw children struggle in that regard.
I really want you to talk about, so when I was thinking you are a very good storyteller, and even when we have conversations offline, and the first time I met you, you really dove into the one book about the Black boy and the Black boy trying to learn and navigate through that time. Can you talk a little bit about that particular book and what inspired you? Because I heard a little bit right then and there, but what are some of the things that you want to talk a little bit about that book that you're kind of describing? And I feel like you're describing, so our audience can kind of hear that.
It had to be my first, King Monty, my PE teacher. I finished it December 2019. I probably started working on it in some emergency role on an airplane in 2016. Just finally building up the courage and realizing that, like, yo, we got this time. There's only so much chess and like Plants vs. Zombies you can play on a plane. So I realized, thankfully I was in a job where I was able to travel and I had a little bit of too much alone time. And I'm the type, when I have too much silence and too much time for reflection, I start bringing up times that I feel like need to be shared, instances and experiences, in that theoretical framework of understanding that everything has a foundation. It's how high you're going to build up from there, how deep you're going to go into your reflection. And I started thinking about my stories, my friends' stories, my father's stories. And I realized that most importantly, it was the stories of my scholars that had to be told, because each 27 of them, all 27 of them, 32 fifth graders, 27 third graders, all of them, they each had their own story to tell. And while some of the struggles were similar, some of them were just far greater and deeper than you would expect coming in on a Thursday morning at 8:15 in the morning. So when I think about some of these stories, because many of these kids have graduated, a couple of them have written me an email and just randomly have like popped in like a text message like, oh man, how y'all still got my number? And hearing, it's because of you. I fought through a lisp that I had, a speech impediment. It's because of you that I fell in love with literature, because it wasn't just about as many books as we can read or how fast you can read the book or what your fluency was in reading, but it was about, did you understand? Could you see it in your mind? And it only took but a few books and a few frustrations for me to realize that many of our children of color weren't viewing the greater picture of us, of our hue, of our skin tones, of our setbacks. And that was a problem. I realized that while, yes, we are prevalent in several forms and fashions of children's literature, but it's insufficient. And it is not enough, because when you see the gap, we can talk about the achievement gap, we can talk about whatever gap you want to talk about. But when we talk about the child's inability to read, to make that transition from a board book to a picture book to a middle grade chapter book, that, my friend, is where many of our students plateau, or even more of them fall off the cliff. And that just trickles its way to 10th grade, if they make it to 10th grade. But right. 10th grade is that grade where you realize, I ain't got to be here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And to me, it all boils down to, of course, the home, but even greater than that, that reinforcement of the importance of literature.
Mm-hmm.
Education is the ultimate equalizer.
Wow. Yeah, man. I just, as you're thinking, as you're speaking, and you're chatting about some of the things and the teachers and things like that, I know that I also mentioned offline, I said, well, who was that person? And for me, that person that really did it, it wasn't just my coach, because I want to give him a huge shout out. I came from a single parent household. My mom realized that, she couldn't raise me by herself. So she tried to make sure that she put certain men in my life, and just not with athletes and athletics, but also with, leadership programs, alpha leadership programs, other oratorical contests with other Black boys. And so I remember my coach, shout out to Coach Norwood, really in the 8th grade, being able to take this short, chubby kid and push me to a level 3 or 4 years later, and left a lasting impression on me, because it wasn't the practice. It was outside the practice. It was the extra work that he did. And I find that a lot of times that if I didn't have that, and I look at those small things and I'm like, if he didn't push me past what I thought was good, I wouldn't have achieved much of what and received and had the same mindset that I have right now. So, and then also going into in high school and having that male mentor, being able to work in a professional setting, because during that time, only certain people had an opportunity to work in a professional setting, that you had to walk in with your shirt tucked in and a shirt and tie, things of that nature. So I huge shout out to Dr. Harris, who was able to do that. I know that's we all know who Dr. Harris is, but give me the opportunity, brother, to really push me in a way, made me feel comfortable, made me understand why I was there, coming into manhood, coming into a lot of different things at your teenage years, where you can go, like you said, 10th grade, go from one way to the other. So who was that person for you, Mike?
Oh man, I want to say that that's like a super easy question, but it's not, because it's our village, because even, it's so tough, because I don't want to discredit, close friends, first boss, my coach. I remember my linebacker coach, he didn't take life easy on me. At all. Ice cream? Yes, you can. And you need to go take a bath. Okay. It's so many people, but once you knock the froth off, it was my father. It's no doubt about it. That question is it could just roll off my tongue, because I think about how much he reminded me growing up. Like, boy, you got a daddy in your life. Man, you know how lucky you are.
Yeah.
I just like, okay, yes. See, when one comes, the other one comes. I got to attach that to him. But yeah, man, my pops, he never let a day go by without reminding me, how fortunate I am. And I think it took like, all right, bro, I get it.
Yeah.
He was like, no, I don't think you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Think of your friends, think of your classmates, think of how many of your peers, have a father who comes to pick you up from school, or shows up to practice and watches, or shows up to the game. Like, yeah, there are a sprinkle. I mean, out of a sample population of a couple hundred, you're gonna have a few outliers. But overall, you see, many moms and aunties and grandmas, and shout out to them.
Yeah.
Shout out to our beautiful women and our queens. But there's a void. It's present. And it's not hard to miss. And I knew that growing up, that as much as I wanted to, I'm going to my mama's house. Like, man, I'm going to my grandma's house. As much as that found its way to like slip through the cracks of my teeth, I knew that there was a greater good.
Right.
And I knew that whatever road that I was taking, that he was putting me through, it had a purpose. It took me a long time to really accept that. But I always knew, like, all right, I feel like he set me up for some kind of lesson.
Something that's bigger than what you did.
When I used to man, I guess it was just about to learn something new, but I knew.
Do you have that? Do you have that with that? Because if we were talking about your father, what was that aha moment to you? What was that moment? It was like, yeah, that's it. I get it now.
I can't tell you. There's just so many. There's so many. I see, like,
give me an example. Give me an example one.
I can see him sitting in the stands. My first sport was baseball.
Okay.
I was horrible. I was so bad.
Right.
I was so bad. Like 10th at bad, left field bad. But Buddy was there. He was always in the stands. Even when I wouldn't swing at the pitch, or I wouldn't, do anything, because it was like 6th, 7th grade, first sport. He still was right there. I could hear him, like, you got it, Mikey, you got it, dog.
Yeah.
And I could just, as a parent, being at some of these things, man, your child suck or the other kids suck. You like, boy,
right.
I need to work on that. So I don't want to say that was the aha moment, but there was just a culmination of so much and so many opportunities that he took full advantage of, and he didn't pass up. I'm like, no, he gonna be with me. Like, no, he's gonna experience this with me. I'm gonna make sure that he is aware and he is subject to this introduction by me and only me, or him in a controlled party. As opposed to just the elements and finding out things the hard way on your own.
Yeah. And
there were some times I was left out there in the woods to wander. That's just in my mind, just writing this. Yeah. And I understood, why, because he can't give you all the answers. But man, it's a blessing. More importantly, it's a privilege. 2010 census, they said that 43% of America stem from a fatherless home.
Yep.
Yeah, that was like 11 years ago.
Who knows what it is?
That number has shrank.
Absolutely. With society and where we are now, with just not looking at the black male as we once did. And I think that's why you're doing what you're doing, while I'm doing what I'm doing. We're having these conversations so that we can make sure that, our presence is still there. And, thank you for sharing that particular story and that person with us, because I'm sure he understands too, where what has gotten him. You talked a little bit about the mentorship, but what about, and you and I have both seen it. I know I've seen it firsthand, continue to see it. And I know you've seen it throughout your experiences, but the effects on not having the male mentor or the male around.
Oh,
so like, I think that's something that's a greater, and I think I've heard a lot in society about, I never heard my mom say that. Well, I didn't need a man, or to your stat that you just brought up just now. How important is it, or shift that question? What do you think that looks like on the other side? Because I know classmates, I know teammates, I know just guys who were super talented without that guidance of a male, what they are now, And so, can you talk about any of your experiences, especially with, some of the things that you've done, with your stories, with your storytelling, and you continue to do, that you kind of reflect on what happens if we don't have that male mentorship?
Oh man, such a loaded question. And the reason being because there will always be someone in the shadows. There will always be. And it doesn't have to be a male, it could be a female, But when I think of the word mentor, we all like to ensure that it's something beautiful and it's something intentional. We're mentoring someone up for success. We're going to make sure that we're there for them, whether they fail or succeed. Well, unfortunately, there are people on the block, right up there at the corner store, just a few feet away from that light to cross to get to school or to the bus stop. And there are plenty of people who will fill that void. So when I think of the effects of not having a male mentor in someone's life, I think it opens the door for some dangerous possibilities. I think the effects of not having a mentor who is intentional with what it is that they bring to the table for that of the child or the scholar, man, it puts people and it puts children and those who are just, I don't want to say naive, they're just looking for someone to be accepted. That's where, that's my take on why gangs are so popular. It's that feeling of being accepted, being wanted, being valued, being championed. You'd be surprised, but there's so many young men who look for that affirmation, not only from mama, but from daddy too.
Right.
And it breaks my heart because when that gap or that void is present, as I tried my hardest to write about, there will always be someone who's willing to fill that void. And the sad thing is that there are predators out here.
Yeah.
There are people who watch and they know what the neighborhood is like. And they know that you strapped for cash.
Right.
And you got 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and it's like 4 of y'all in one bed. And they know that you want more from that corner store, but you could probably only afford that peach soda.
Right.
And that is what I choose to tell.
And as you know, children, I'm sorry to cut you off, children are very impressionable.
Oh man.
You can lead them, especially those younger years. Again, we're specifically talking about men of color, young boys of color. They are very impressed. They want to have the flyest thing, the newest thing, this and the third. So if you give them an easy way or a way to get that, it makes it easy for them. And I think a lot of times, I'm sure you can talk to this, but you and I, who are going to hold them to a different standard.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be challenging for them because they want the easy way out, like most children do. But I think to what you're saying, even when you mention your father, you'll get it later on, and you also know it's the right thing, but you're going to push the buttons.
You got to.
But it's our job to go ahead and do that.
You got to prepare them because reality ain't no joke.
Right.
When I left Florida A&M, I was immediately pop, smacked in the face with like, oh, so I'm no longer the majority in this classroom.
Right.
I see that I'm a minority. And in some instances, expectations have dropped and many have risen.
Right.
That whole dress code, that whole you gotta wear a jacket to get in this classroom, player, that went out the door. And that was so weird to me. It was odd. People would ask me, like, why are you dressed up today, Mr. Woodward? Why are you? Bro, this is inspiration. The kids gotta see that we can style on them one day, whatever it is that we want to wear on our feet.
Mm-hmm.
But 4 or 5 other days out the week, we can really put on a coat and put on a blazer and really show them like, hey, this is how we look, in other instances and other lights. And I think from even something as small as that, these kids, they have to see what it is that they can be. The potential, I believe, is limitless. However, when we start placing ceilings on children, young Black boys in particular, we tell them, hey, you're not smart enough to do that. Man, nobody want to do that. Man, cool kids don't do that. It puts people in a box, and it makes them feel inwardly insufficient, but outwardly, let me wear this mask like everything is cool. Mental depression and mental health is so real. And I don't think it begins when we're adults. I think the moment that frontal lobe is developing, that frontal lobe, it doesn't develop until 26, 27 years old. So as these adolescents are constantly growing, that frontal lobe is as well. And kids are having a tough time determining fact from fiction.
Right.
Who to follow, who to lead. Who should I shut up and listen to? Or who should I make that fast money alongside with?
Right.
These are choices that our young Black boys are making every single day. And if it isn't up to us, you know what I'm saying? If it is up to us on this call, us in this audience, us on this world, us in these low-income communities, then we already know who's going to step in and fill the void.
Absolutely. Let's it's going right into the last question I have for you and me is, what do we need to do as Black men? You talked a little bit about it just then. In my personal opinion is for one, these conversations have to be had. We have to continue to have conversations with each other and not be afraid to have them as men, not be afraid to talk about them, not to be afraid to actually buck sometimes and say, hey, I know about this. To what you said with your dad, even with your mother, hey, I'm going to take him this weekend because you know what you know, because you've been there. He knew what he knew because he's been there. And the cycle continues. So I think we have to continue and make sure that we don't stand down to women sometime, even when they were trying to do the best thing for our young boys so that they can become men. And so what about you? What do you think? Because you spoke a bit about it earlier with your, just your experiences or whatnot. And I've had some of those too. What do you feel like men, you would say on this call, who are going to listen to this, need to do? We're in it. We know the life of young boys, but the everyday guy who's working, works in business and things of that nature. What are some of the things you would say they need to do to get involved and to make that inspirational push for our young boys?
Yeah, the moment you said it, I was just thinking, I was just listing out all these different things, that I do, that I enjoy other Black men doing, that I see on my timeline, that I see in group chats. I think number one, and this is in no order, but the first thing I wrote, was to affirm one another. I think our words carry so much weight, and words of affirmation mean the world to some people, and to some others, it may go over their head. But the intent to affirm one another, to tell somebody like, yo, this is great. I really enjoy what you said, or I really appreciate what it is that you're doing for these kids, or I think what you do it well, my guy. You ever I don't know. It makes me think of homecoming when you see people and you like, nah, man, I'm trying to get like you. No, I'm trying to get like you. It all goes back to building each other up. And I think sometimes we unintentionally spend so much time tearing one another apart through chattiness, through just through intentional cracks.
Right.
But it is because that if we can continue to affirm one another and call one another out, that's my second one. Iron sharpens iron. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
Accountability.
If my feelings don't match, let me know, dog. Don't have me go out here and we looking and I'm looking crazy and you looking good. Right. And I think the final one, well, I also wrote learn to keep your mouth shut. I think that is something that listen from his men, his husbands, his fathers, learn to keep your mouth shut. But most importantly, be intentional. You know, and when I think of what we need to do as Black men is to be intentional with what it is that we want to do. Forget all that too cool.
Right.
Forget all that. You know, I'm gonna eat this humble pie. Like, yeah, but only eat so much of it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, do some bragging. You know,
Right.
brag about someone else, which all goes back to affirming another Black man.
Right.
Or affirming anyone it is that you cross paths with. I'm a huge advocate for behavior narration in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
You see a child doing well, you tell that child he's doing well. I'm gonna reward you, and I ain't gonna give you a piece of candy, but these words cost, player.
Right.
You know, so I think those are just a few of the things that we need to do together, you know, to make each other great. Because I feel like as we go, so goes a whole lot of other people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. I appreciate you talking about this boys to men conversation. I know we're going to continue to have these conversations go on and on. I want us to be able to, the listeners and viewers, to know how to get in contact with you, Mr. Woodward. Where do we get in contact with you?
Oh, it's so easy. You can find me at michaelwoodwardjr.com.
Mm-hmm.
There's my contact. You can reach out directly to me. You can shoot me an email at mwoodward@inspirethemasses.com. My Instagram as well. That's super easy way to get a hold of me.
Okay.
That's author M. Woodward Jr.
Okay.
So yeah, so many different ways, but the easiest way, definitely log on, get on your web browser, www.michaelwoodwardjr.com.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward, for having this conversation with me, brother, and us continuously having these conversations as Black men to influence the masses.
Oh, yeah.
I'm your host, K Mo again. Thank you, listeners. We'll see you next time. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for coming onto the show. You can find us at tomorrowsmen.com, on Facebook at Tomorrow's Men, and on Instagram at Tomorrow's Men. Please click and subscribe to the button below. I'm your host, K Mo. Until we meet again, know we love you, work with us, be with us, and know we're coming from the heart. Peace.